I think if we asked all three of
Thanks.
us, we could ask Nate this question. Do you think you could love any more than you do right now? Like before you have a kid? Like, do you think you
I have
know
to
what?
make sure my wife's not listening in the other room first.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Top Contractor Podcast, the show that highlights the remarkable individuals who are shaping the construction industry and pushing its boundaries with engaging interviews, expert discussions, and real-world stories of success. I'm your host, Bill Ryman, your broker builder, here with my co-host,
Nate Swink. Good morning, Bill.
Nate. How you doing today, man?
Good, man. Good.
On the edge of your seat. I know that. That's for sure, right?
No
It's
baby
crunch time.
yet. I'm on the edge of my seat, and the baby's on the edge of my wife's cervix, or however that works.
Nate is in crunch time, so it could be any second now that he's going to have to leave this episode. So we're going to keep rolling on it here. Hopefully he can make it through another one with us. So Nate, before we get started, we got a special guest today, but before we introduce him, what's this show all about?
Yes, sir. So on the TCS podcast, we got 3 different styles of episodes. Number 1 is where me and Bill do a deep dive into a specific topic. And number 2 is... What is number 2? Nah, I'm just kidding. Number 2 is construction news, right? Current construction news topics and how they apply to you, right? Market trends, all that good stuff. Some of it's boring, but it's important. And number 3 is we bring on an expert guest. And today we have one of the TCS OGs. Actually, I think he is the OG, Keith Callaway Jr.
I don't know if I'm the OG, but I'm one of the very, very first ones. Yeah, that's true.
I think you are the first one. You're the OG.
Yeah, I think Kevin had one guy that went through sales training before K&L jumped on the TCS bandwagon. So
That's good.
I'm honored to be here. I'm excited to chop it up with you guys and just chat and see what's new in the world of construction and see how we can be of value to the people around us.
No, man, we're pumped to have you. You and I've had you on my past podcast too. Really good episode, a lot of really good detail on that too. But we're gonna get into your life today a little bit more, who Keith Callaway Jr. is, and talk a lot more about you and kind of how you've gotten to where you are with K&L. But before we get started, let's talk about you a little bit. Introduce yourself. Who is Keith Callaway Jr.?
Yeah, so I'm Keith Callaway Jr. I'm a husband and now a father, a recent father. I think everybody on this screen is. So your son's like 3 months old, right, Bill?
I'm 7 weeks going on 8 weeks.
Yeah, 2 months. I've got a 3.5-month old. Nate is gonna, like, any day now is gonna jump into this fatherhood thing. So you got a bunch of freshies on this episode of the fatherhood thing. So that's a new one that I've added to my, I'm these things. Father is the next one, the most recent, probably the one that's I've smiled more about that than just about any other accomplishment that I've ever appreciated or experienced. But I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm the oldest of 7 kids. Got, a lot of things that we can dive into, but I'm a second generation of a family business, second chance employer. We've got a lot of interesting characters that work in and around us. So we have some very spicy stories. And we also have some really good stuff that when you give people the opportunity to show you who they are, they really come through. But mostly, I'm just mostly proud of being a dad right now. Cause I don't know about you, Bill, but I have wanted to come home earlier and to just like turn the phone off more in the last 3 months than I ever thought I would ever want to do. And this little guy in his little picture, he just comes home. I come home and he just smiles at me and everything feels right in the world. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm starting to get more of the smiles and stuff like that. And that's when it's really starting to hit me too, and coming home to that and seeing them. And no, you're right, man. It's like you want to get home. You have a reason to just race home, see your son, see your wife, and be present in their lives too. And yeah, the phone ding. I mean, I set the phone down quite a bit, just to be present on top of, you don't really have time to be on the phone anymore, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's hard to hold a child because they're like bendy right now, right?
yeah,
Like they can't
yeah,
hold themselves up. You have to hold them with two hands.
They're
And then
bendy.
yeah, you're trying to like I would like last night he was super fussy because between dinner time he's always upset, right? Like it's just about his bedtime. We're trying to get him to 7 o'clock so that he sleeps until like 7 in the morning. And one of us has to hold him. Like as soon as he knows that food comes out of the oven or off the stove, instantly that little boy starts crying. And one of us watches the other eat, and then we switch.
yep,
Right?
yep.
Like this. He won't let us sit at the table because he doesn't like being on our laps at the table. He wants to be somewhere where he can like look around. And it's just a whole new experience in life.
Yeah, it's like a tag team effort, man. You're literally
Yeah.
tag teaming yourself in there. You're like, all right, you done with dinner? Oh, I'm starving. Okay, tag team. You go over to
Yeah.
the couch, you watch them.
Well, and I would say like one of the biggest adjustments is like the skills, the communication skills in my relationship with my wife have
Mm,
had to improve. Like I don't think we had a bad relationship, and I don't think we communicated poorly. But when you have a child that gets up a couple times a night and everybody's a little short on sleep, and the creature comforts that we used to be accustomed to on a regular basis are getting gapped out farther and farther and farther. We've had to learn to say, hey, I need an hour to be on this particular phone call. Or like yesterday my wife had a counseling thing, and she's like, hey, can you take the baby? And I was like, yes, but I have to leave the minute you are done. And
mm-hmm.
so we transitioned right at the end of these obligations, and that has been one thing that's changed quite a bit, because she is just on an island all day with this little tiny human that he doesn't care what your schedule is. Like he wants what he wants. He wants it now. And so like if you have to go to the store and he starts screaming, like you're pulling over and feeding him on the side of the road.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's just nothing glamorous about this, but it's been so cool to be able to
Yeah.
watch him, the development, and it's just amazing.
The communication aspect of it too, and it's a learning. It's definitely an always learning thing too. Like with my wife and figuring that out and how to communicate. Like, I need this time for that, and she needs this time for that, and to do it better too. We're learning, because it's a complete change, man, and it's actually probably going to make me a better communicator in a lot of ways too, even with business and so on too. But it's also kind of like I've learned with it, like not having your business mentality and bringing that home
Yeah.
is another thing too, and trying to coach her on different things too,
Hmm.
because that's who we are as business
Guilty
owners.
as charged.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean
leave
that's
leave the unsolicited advice to another place and time.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, and I've learned that, and that's been part of this process within the last couple of months, and not coaching her, like I'm a business owner, and
Yeah.
like because as an entrepreneur, that's how we are. We want to fix it. We want to fix
Yeah.
the problems quick. We want to get through it, and we want to move
Well,
on.
I think what we do, Bill, if we're going to get really deep, I think we try to solve it, and then we try to get our time back. But
Mm,
this is
yep,
one
yep,
item that for the first couple of years of their lives, like they're totally dependent on an adult,
yeah,
and we're not getting our time back, right? And we can't solve it like it's a business problem to say, hey, we're going to get our 90 minutes back here because we can shortcut this solution. Like, there's no shortcut in this. Like it's a couple years until they can walk and talk and do all those other things that we literally have to change the way we even approach or view the thing. It's not a problem, because it's not a problem, right? Like child development isn't a problem. It's just an experience.
yeah,
And
Hmm.
for those of us in the business world, and the three of us on this screen, I know we're like kind of bulls in a china shop, right? Like I need to solve this today. I want
yeah,
this off my checklist. And
yeah.
being a parent is not something that you can check off, right? Like and the other one that's interesting, I think that this is a sidebar. I think contractors need to understand that in certain aspects of raising kids or family or just relationship in general, we need to be more intentional with the time we take.
Mm,
Probably the biggest realization that I've had as an early dad is I don't think I took enough time with my wife to make sure that I was caring for her because of the intentional conversations that we've had since Judah's been born. I'm like, hey, you need an afternoon to go do something. And it doesn't matter if you're by yourself, if you're with your friends, if you just want to be in the house. I am taking sole responsibility for this tiny human. And I need you to not feel the obligation to come and check on us. And mostly, I need you to not be around. Right? Like, I want you to have the freedom. If you want to go to Starbucks and get a cup of coffee, if you want to go on a walk, anything, like, just know that I'm going to be the dad for the next 3 hours. And mostly need you gone. Like, you need to go take a clarity break from being a mom for just a little while. And I don't know that I've ever done that in my relationship until we had Judah.
Mm-hmm.
Because like there was time in our own houses, in our own relationships where like Liz would go out to the living room and you're still in your office and like she's having her time and you're having your time and it was never spoken about. Well, now that we have this little kid, like we have to talk about it. This is my time. Saturday mornings until noon, I can go run and do my other things that I enjoy doing. And then at noon, I have to be ready to be a father and a husband.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that it's just a whole different, my schedule the last 3 months has been horrible. And for those of you who don't know, so I got a call on a Friday at about 1:00. I got a call Friday at 1:00, and the adoption agency, because we adopted Judah, said, hey, there's a birth mom in Texas, and she wants you guys to be there when he's born. How fast can you get to Texas? And so we had Friday at noon, Sunday morning at 12:15 in the morning, we were parents. So we got on a plane Friday afternoon. We landed Saturday morning. We waited at the hospital. So like this wind up that most people have in their relationships of 9 or 10 months of like, okay, we're going to get this ready. We're going to kind of do the nesting thing. We're going to create all this space. We had like 20 hours, 30 hours to do. And I was not ready to be a dad. Like my scheduling has really lacked. If you looked at my office, if I turned this computer around, like my areas that I work and spend time are more messy and just cluttered with things because of the lifestyle change that's occurred. And it is a really difficult transition, very valuable, but very difficult. And I would just encourage all the people out there that are going through this, like make sure you spend intentional time. The only person who's going to remember that you were working late is the kid that you missed their thing.
Mm.
Right? That nobody else in your life is going to be like, you know what Bill does? He works late every day.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Just some of those realizations that I've had that I was like, man, I put some people in some really precarious situations by pushing so hard when the thing that I was pushing for doesn't really matter as much.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to hear how similar we are with everything. Like hearing your perspective and how it's innate. You're probably gonna guarantee feel the same way once your kid's born here soon, any minute now. But you know, it's crazy to because I struggled with it too. My schedule's just it went crazy. It went nuts, and it's the same thing too. It's like, and I still struggle with she used to work for our company, so I'm struggling with that her change too. She's struggling mentally with that change where she's the one home. I get to go to work, still have that same time at work that she used to have, but now she's home with the baby too, and that's been kind of a struggle with us both where she'll bring up work, you get to go to work, this and that, and we're trying to navigate through that as well because she misses it. I mean, she's a worker, she's a hard worker, and that's been one of the recent struggles with us too, and figuring out how to kind of navigate that. It's like you said, you there's no way to predict what's going to happen with this whole thing. It's just it's crazy in itself, and like you've even said too, just figuring out communication, having those right times where, hey, you go off, go do your thing, go get your nails done, go just get out of the house, go to your sister's, go just have you time. Those are so important, but it's also communicating back your time too that
Yeah.
you need, which I haven't been good at either, which you're making me have the realization of that as well. But it's crazy, man. It's like it's not planned. You can't plan it. It just you learn as you go too.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like I'm not going to be able to go golfing for the next few weeks. Is that what I'm hearing here?
You probably should just put them in the closet for like a year
Oh
and
no.
then see if it's something that you could pick up again.
Yeah, I didn't go for a couple months now, Nate. Let's put it that way. I just
Yeah.
went this past weekend for the first time because it
Do
was a
you
lot
think
longer.
Tiger Woods' dad took him so that he can still be on the course? Do you think that Tiger Woods' career started because his dad was like, I really like golf and I don't want to give it up,
Probably.
so I'm going to take you with me?
Probably. It
Food for
worked
thought.
out.
Yeah, Nate, you'll be feeling a lot of this too. But hey, you got Keith and I to help you out through it too, because we're kind of living through the experiment spirit.
Keith can come down and babysit while I go golf.
Yeah.
There you go. Problem solved.
If you can get my wife to sign off on me being gone again, I'm down.
No, man, I love it because I relate to you quite a bit in that aspect of just life and everything, and just dealing with the different navigating through the whole situation and everything too. And communication is, and I've been trying to get better with the communication, get better with the patience. That's another thing. If it's going to make me, if anything's going to make me patient, it's a screaming baby at 3 a.m. too, because and I used to not have that much patience, but it's just kind of checking yourself, being like, okay,
Yeah.
it's a situation. What do you need to do? Especially when you're alone with them and he's just nonstop screaming. And then
they're trying to tell you something. They don't have the capacity to tell you. So it's an awful lot like a business situation, right?
Yeah.
Like people call and they're upset because they're just upset. And so they say things. And then you, in a business scenario, you can have an actual conversation to kind of start excavating what the real issue is. Well, the little kid, he's either tired, he needs food, or he needs change, right? Or maybe he just wants comforted, right? But there's not very many things, but it's a guessing game. And it's very similar to an upset customer, right? Like we have to navigate through, got to try this, we got to try this. And it's kind of like multiple choice. And it really is making me more aware of the things that I haven't been very good at. That's probably been the biggest difference in fatherhood. I'm like, I used to be I would have argued that I was not as selfish as I actually am because I'm super protective of my sleep. I really like my schedule. I like the rhythm of life that I get used to. And there is no rhythm besides randomness to the things that are happening now. Sometimes like it's 2 hours and then sometimes it's 3 hours that he wants fed. And all of this we just have to accept.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been really eye opening. I would say that overall, if you think you have life down, try being a parent.
Yeah.
From what I've heard, every kid's different. Like my brother's got three. And the first one was like, he goes, she was kind of fussy as a baby. And then she was super chill as a toddler. And the second one, his daughter, he said, this is the meanest baby that's ever lived. She's just upset all the time. She eats nonstop. And then they had their third one, and that baby will sit there fine, looking at everything, doesn't make a peep. He goes, it's awesome. We finally got the best child, and I don't think we need to have any more. I was like, oh, jeez. But yeah, it's like every kid's different. Every circumstance is different. And it's been a real adjustment, but something that, Nate, I'm really anxious to watch you go through this, because I think if we asked all three of us, we could ask Nate this question. Do you think you could love any more than you do right now? Like before you have a kid? Like, do you think
I have to make sure my wife's not listening in the other room first.
Yeah. Well, but like, do you think you have the capacity right now to love more than you do? Or like, you believe what love is, and like, here is the ceiling here. Dude, when that little kid looks at you the first time, it changes everything you thought to be true about what you would do for another human being. Mm-hmm. Like in a moment, I was like, I was telling somebody the other day, I was like, I haven't thought about like what is possible in life or what is possible for me in a long time. And I don't think I would hesitate to do anything to protect that little baby. And that was one of those moments where I thought I had kind of reined in the scary things in life. And then that occurred to me, and I said, I would probably commit a felony and wouldn't think twice about it. Like it wouldn't even dawn on me that it would be wrong. I would just do it.
Yeah.
And I would step in front of a bullet. I would keep him safe and my family safe. And, and the awareness that came to me is like, wow, I have a capacity to love that is deeper than I ever thought possible.
Uh,
But it's different than like a love relationship with my spouse,
yeah.
Mm.
right? It's a whole different level of that kid's never leaving. I'm the only dad that little boy's ever going to have. Right. And it's
Yeah.
my job to raise him up and teach him maybe some of the communication skills that we lack. Right.
Mm-hmm.
How do I create the home that is the home that we didn't have? Also, and Jay Durand would say this, he goes, you're going to screw everybody up one way or the other. So are you going to screw them up and to be more well-rounded so they understand how to problem solve? Are you going to protect them so much that they don't understand the dangers? Like, what is it that you're going to choose when you screw your kid up? Because you're going to screw them up. You're going to skew them one way or the other. You just have to choose which one you think is going to set them up best for life. And there's so many parallels with business in that analogy. And I was like, dude, this guy's so right. I never had considered that by protecting him, I'm going to screw him up and like jade him to the reality of the dangers of life. Or I let him see all the dangers of life and then maybe he likes one and then we're also screwed. Right. There's all these differences, but they're so parallel to the way that we run our lives in business that I said, I guess I get it because we go out and we basically gamble every day.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If you talk about business, it's a more calculated gamble than the roulette wheel or craps, right? Because we have a educated guess of what the outcome is going to end up being. With you build homes, Nate, you build homes too, but you do the structural stuff and all that stuff. But we have a guess that the outcome is going to be, but it's literally gambling every day, and we're doing the same thing with kids. And like we got to figure out what we're going to keep them safe from, what we're going to protect them from,
Yeah.
and what is the calculated risk we're willing to take when we raise these little tiny humans.
Yeah. And reflecting off what you said there too, I mean, that love you feel it is insane. I mean, I second what you said on the protection thing too. I've thought about that. I'm like, I would take a bullet. I'd get a felony for this kid. I would do anything. If somebody's tried taking my kid, I'd shoot them and get the felony. I'd be thrown in prison. I don't care. I'd do whatever
Yeah.
it takes to protect this
Yeah.
kid. And another thing that always it would go through my mind too. And the first time I held him, I was like, how can I be better? How can I be a better father than my father was? How can I perfect this thing? There's so much stuff that runs through your mind too. Is like how can I be more present? How can I make this kid into Tom Brady? How can I, how can I, just you're literally every day you have to raise this kid. It's just like you're always thinking like being present, just being there more too is it's so important in kids' lives, and that's one thing I'm gonna do better than my dad did. Not saying my dad was a bad dad, but I'm gonna be there more too in a lot of ways as well. But
Yeah.
it is like you said though too. There's one way you're gonna mess up. We're parents, we're people. Stuff's gonna happen, but it's figuring all that out along the way, man. That's what this journey is. It's crazy. It's crazy when it happens. So
It
Nate,
is.
buckle up.
Yeah. Buckle up, get some people on speed dial because you're going to need to text some people at 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
The good thing is in our little TCS family here, like at 2 or 3 in the morning, I know that I can text people on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And that there's a high likelihood that at 5 or 6 a.m. on the East Coast, somebody's going to be up.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's funny the rhythm in which Brian and I communicate. It's like 2 or 3 in the morning my time, and I'm up feeding Judah, and it's 5 in the morning there, and then we have like a 4-hour break, and then we resume the conversation. And there's some other people back east that's Daniel Good's one of those. So I'm like, man, this is hard. And he goes, yeah, but it's fun. Just enjoy it while it lasts, and then it kind of goes away. And he goes, and then they become 9 years old, and like you guys see his story the other day.
Oh yeah.
Blake's tipped back in the seat like this, and
Mm-hmm.
he says, "I hope Blake understands that this black car service isn't free."
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. No, it really is, man. Yeah, I love that. Let's get into. I want to get into your life a little bit. Obviously, after talking about that, I mean, we can go on about having kids, the whole topic there. But
Yeah.
I got so much. Nate's got so much to talk to you about too, and um, let's go into your story a little bit more. I know you've been sharing your story more and more about your past, the hard times that you went through, the dark times. Um, I know in, let's say, February 2015. I know that year, that date rings a bell to you quite a bit. Reached a pretty low point in life. Talk about it. Talk about the battle. Talk about how you got out of it and how you become who you are today.
Yeah. So I've got, I mean, there's a couple of major turning points. I would warn people today, maybe don't marry the first girl who gives you attention. Like 10 out of 10, probably not a great idea. Um, yeah. So that's the first point. I got a divorce at 29 and was hanging out at the bars and ended up the people I was hanging out with that were as miserable and like broken as inside as I was. They liked to drink and then continue the party into drugs. And so I was hanging around the wrong people. I drank meth in an iced tea, like it was a pure leaf, unsweetened iced tea. It was the green label. Every time I go into 7-Eleven or something, I'm like, there it is. There she is. That's what introduced me to the thing that wrecked my life. That's what I used to say. I would tell you now that I wrecked my life. Like I will take responsibility because I knew the moment that I experienced drugs the first time that it wasn't something I should be experiencing, but it felt too good not to do it. Right. So I continue 820 days, roughly 2 years and 3 months, stayed doing drugs every day, burned my whole life to the ground. Right. I was a business owner with my dad before, during, and after. And we almost didn't have an after because I tried to burn everything to the ground, identity thefted him, stole a whole bunch of money. Um, but by the grace of God, we made it through that. And long story short, the good thing is that it does have a turning point, right? Like I did reach the low, and I went to jail 6 times in 7 months, and I was either going to go to prison or I was going to go to rehab. And I was kind of a dirtbag at the time, so I asked my attorney if there were chicks in rehab, and he said I think so. And I was like, well, probably should do that instead of prison because I hear there are no women in prison. And and I ended up being late to rehab. Got to an all boys facility. It was it saved my life, right? And then um, a couple of little highlights. One of the things that I remember being there was the counselor gets all of us. There's a 16 of us in this house. He sits us all down. I think there was 13 or 14 of us because it was kind of a revolving door. Like you spent somewhere between 30 and 60 days in this treatment facility. So there was always a couple of beds that were turning over. And he said, look around. The reality is that one of you is going to make it to a year sober. And then of 10 of you that make it, one of you will make it to 5 years. And I was like, bro, that's me. Like I'm chronically unique. I'm definitely going to be that guy. And that was what happened, right? I was done. I can tell you that from that point forward, I made a conscious choice. I was like, I don't think I need drugs and alcohol. I'm crazy enough without any of that I definitely don't need that to fit in.
That ain't no shit.
Yeah. Right. Like I'll do anything that I will do drunk or high, I will do sober. Right. Because now I remember it and I want to talk about it and laugh about it. And I made the choice to change my life. And then I was really deep into AA, worked the 12 steps, started paying people back, really got some momentum on becoming a whole person. Right. Like I walked into a room my whole life and would feel like everybody was looking at me and saying, I don't want to talk to him. That guy's got, and then all of my list of insecurities would be the things that I heard that person saying about me. And then slowly but surely, I realized that the problem wasn't the world. The problem was my perception with what happened in the world, and really did some work to unwind my belief systems around all of that. And a little at a time, got my driver's license back, finished treatment, moved back with mom and dad, did the hard thing and stayed at mom and dad's house because it would have been easy to leave. But I needed to be there because I needed to mend the fences with all the relationships that were the most important to me, which are my siblings. I needed them to see that I was trustworthy, and I needed to be around enough that they could say, "Well, Keith can be around my kids now, right? X, Y, and Z." And over the course of 4 or 5 years living at home, from 31 to 35, 36, mended those relationships, started dating. Not the type of person that hangs out in rehab, right? Like, and this is what I always tell people: like, we are the reflection of who we believe ourselves to be. So when you don't have a good self-esteem, I go after the girl that looks like on the outside that she doesn't have a self-esteem, because when I look in the mirror, that's who I see. That's who I believe I've earned. And so as I was working on me, I went from picking up these chicks at the NA meetings and, having our moms and people drive us places because that's who we were, finally to finding a whole person and saying, I don't think I want those things, and raising my standards a little at a time. And this is happening in me. And what I didn't know is it started to bleed out into my business life, right? Like the values that I was picking up started to be something that were a little bit infectious. And I started to watch people changing around me. And over the course of the last little over 8 years, gone from that to somebody that now can lead. I've got my parents' trust back. If they see a casino charge, which is one of the things that I used to like to do when I was getting really high, my mom says, "Oh, what are we doing at the casino?" And I'm like, "Well, there's a paving conference," or, "Hey, there's a TCS conference in a casino," right? I don't even know if I don't think I put a 20 in the casino at a gambling machine, right? Like, when you do it high and then you do it sober, like, you can't compare the two. They're two drastically different experiences. But that's what life has become, right? I've just slowly changed, and all of this togetherness and wellness that I was working on interpersonally has become what I stand for in my business life. And we've just gone on this trajectory it's kind of like what are the grading on the curve, right? Like, you've got this curve right here, and then it shoots up at the end. And that's what my life has become. Like, I never thought that I would be married with a wonderful wife who's like probably the sharpest human being I've ever met. She's a teacher, but she's got a master's in all sorts of stuff. And she's just so intelligent that I've found my intellectual equal. And so we can go back and forth, and she's teaching me how to be a better man because she challenges me and makes sure that she's holding the standard, right? Like, "Hey, you said you wanted to run 4 times this week. It's been 3. It's Sunday night. You need to leave. Like, you need to go do these things." But I never thought I'd be a husband, a father, a leader that was trustworthy, all of these things. And slowly over the last 8 years, it's just become something that's become a lifestyle. And for those of us in the construction industry, standards are not always open or easy to find. And so if you can find people around you that you would trust leaving, like, I could call either of you guys and say, "Hey, my wife is landing in wherever you guys are at," and say that there's a plane that, like, her flight was canceled. Is there any way you could pick her up? Right. And I would know that because we believe the same things, that she would be safe. Right. I was not a safe place for anybody for a very, very long time. And now, because of what we all know, it doesn't have to be spoken. There are these standards and values that we all believe in that allow us to do things with the most precious items in our life. And most of them are people. And so it's just been this this kind of upswing that I've ridden. And I keep wondering, I keep looking in the mirror, Bill and Nate, and going, when's this going to end? Like, when does the wave finally go, like, crash over? And what I'm finding, this is the realization with being a dad, it doesn't have to, right? Like, just because something goes down and then it comes back up, it doesn't have to come back down again. Our choices are the only thing that brings it back down. And that's really something that's dawned on me recently, because that's not how science works. That's not what we're taught. If you looked at social media, they would always say it always comes to an end. Well, it comes to an end because somebody changed their value system. And that's the thing that's the big mind-blowing, revelation over the last 6 months that's happened in my life. Like, we can continue being successful. We can not only be good fathers and good leaders, but we can be good husbands, and we can be a beacon of light in this world where, I mean, Bill, you and I are divorced. But we don't have to be a statistic,
Mm.
right? Like my relationship now is drastically different because I was a child when I got married to my first
Yeah.
wife, right? And I was really selfish. But our experience can influence Nate because Nate doesn't have to be that statistic.
Mm-hmm.
And when Nate calls and says, "Hey, this is what I'm struggling with," we can laugh and say, "Yeah, you're supposed to." It's totally normal. When he calls and says, "Is it normal to want to just like put earplugs in and ignore the baby?" Yes, probably should.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So I mean, most of that was personal. The business stuff, a lot of people have heard the story. We started when I got sober 8 years ago. We just looked at the numbers again. I've always said 1 million, but it was like 800,000 that we did the first year I was sober. We're going to do like 17 or $18 million this year.
Mm.
And we went from 5 or 6 guys to over 40.
Wow.
And the stability that comes from having 800,000 to having $17 million to work with, night and day different. Like we can't even talk about how different our lives are because for those people who are self-employed, like you miss paychecks a lot, right? Like Nate, Bill, you guys have, I'm sure you've experienced it. Like it was tight this month. So we only took $1,000, which was just our rent. We couldn't take anything else, or we took a paycheck, but we never cashed it. Right. So on paper, we made the money so that on our taxes later, we could get financing. I haven't missed a paycheck in like 4 or 5 years. Right. That's a big deal for those of us who lived this cycle. And those are the principles that are kind of coming out. And TCS is one of the places that we talk about. I'd say we talk about the principles or the solution minded items more than we talk about the specifics of how we get there.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go back a little bit
Yep.
because I told you I was gonna get a little deeper on
Yeah.
the topic in your life too, because there's so much to gain, so much for value that you're giving out of this whole and out of your experience and everything too. When was it that it all first started, where it started that you're kind of going downhill in life and so on too? Was it when that first company you talked about with your dad that you had and you started making money? And that's kind of just led you to the wrong path and going into the bars and so on and so on. Because one thing you said too, you said at one point in your life, money was more valuable than relationships.
Yeah.
And you said it was almost like your God, and it cost you your marriage, your family, relationships, positions, whatever retirement you were working on, and so on too. It cost you all that. When did that happen? And just talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think if we were to go back and talk to little kid Keith, like talk about what it was, I stored my value. I equated my value with the number of dollars that I had in my pocket or my bank account. And early in my working career, and Bill, you and I are very similar in age, I started working with my dad in 2003. So just after the 9/11 recession, but that one was really short. It was only like 6 months, and it went down fast and it came back up fast. Well, 2003 to 2007 or 8, everybody looked like God, right? Like everybody looked like they were just some sort of investment machine, a money-making prodigy. And I heard that, thought that, and felt that because I'd never really been through a recession. And I didn't think it was ever going to end, right? Like you only know what you know. And so I was making decisions on this meteoric rise in the value of money. And I was like, man, I'll sign for a house. We'll do these things. Because back then you could do stated income loans and all the stuff that led to the 2007 crash. And I didn't have great interpersonal skills, right? Like I never really wanted people to see me. And that's one of the reasons why I share my story so openly today, is that it keeps me accountable to who I don't want to be, right? If Bill knows that I don't drink and Nate knows that I don't drink and they see a drink in my hand, they're going to probably say, hey man, what's up with that? Right. I would hope that my friends would say, what are you thinking? Like, you worked so hard to get what you've got. Why would you consider risking it for that? But what I did, and now I can talk about it because I didn't know then, I replaced value with equating it with dollars. And so when you start doing that and you start hanging around people that need that Louis Vuitton bag, or they need that set of Gucci shoes, or they need that brand new truck. I think I said on the podcast, Bill, I would park the jet ski and the brand new truck outside, even though I had a perfectly good garage, because I needed people to see that I had them, because my value is other people knowing that I had more money than they did. And so you start hanging around, you know, like cells attract in a petri dish. My grandpa used to say that, right? Like positive ions, negative ions, all of these people. If you're sick, if you're addicted to money and value yourself with how much money's in the bank account, your friend circle, your like inner sanctum of people are going to value the same things. So when I started to hit that end of that 2007 peak and went down the other side, my value, my self-esteem went with it. And so I started doing things to numb the effect of what I was seeing in my bank account. And so I was escaping into TV more. I was escaping into drinking a little bit. I was escaping into anything that would make me not feel the feeling of feeling insecure. And so that was the beginning. Like if I go way, way back, that was the beginning of it. I chose to value myself with the number in an app that you could get now. And it was the wrong thing. 10 out of 10 was the wrong thing. I'm not saying that money isn't valuable, because it is a necessary resource and it's a tool, but you need to look at it as a tool. If you put who you are wrapped up into what's in your bank account, you're going to have a very difficult life eventually.
Yeah, amazing. It really is, like when you start focusing, because I mean, when I was younger too, Nate, I mean, you probably say this too, is like, yeah, money was everything. You wanted the money, you wanted nice cars, you wanted all these things. But then when you start learning, you start using it as an asset, investing more into yourself, your companies, your family, and so on too. The value of it is it's such a different look into what money is. It truly is. And that kind of goes into my next thing with you too, is the second chance that you brought up earlier, giving employees second chances. And you got a lot of guys on your crew, a lot of them that probably wouldn't be hired anywhere else. And I've always respected you for this too, because it's amazing how you do it. And you kind of said before we got on, or before we got started here, kind of what you, I want to say, specialize in as a person, and what you're gifted at too, as a person. So talk about that a little bit, and then let's get into the second chance effort too, because one of the things you said is you run a paving company, but what it's become is a platform to teach guys that are very lost how to live. You said that too. So get into that a little bit more.
Yeah. So the second chance thing comes because I didn't deserve a second, third, fourth chance, right? Like there's really no other way to say it. I was a bad bet. My dad would say that today. Like if you lined him up on paper and said, I'm going to go ahead and trust this guy with a company credit card, not a good idea. And so I feel that it's my living amends to the people that I've done wrong to, because you can only pay back so much, right? I was in a meth-induced psychosis, and I don't know all of the people that I hurt. But what I can do is I can make sure that other people are no longer hurt by breaking the cycle of second chance recidivism. Anyway, you guys, something like that. Recidivism, something like that, right? Where these guys that are in trouble end up back in the same place that they were, either back on drugs, back on the streets, or back in the system somehow. And so what we have turned it into, at the beginning, it was the reason that we became a second chance employer is because all of my friends at the time were second chance people, right? Like I didn't have I didn't have Bill and Nate's that knew how to live and knew intuitively, like in their gut, that the things that I thought were okay, you guys would have been like, oh, nobody does that. Like you can't take the car seat out of the back of the car that you're stealing and put it on the sidewalk. And it's still not okay if you do that. right? Well, in my mind, that was somehow okay. Like I was taking the car, didn't want to take the car seat because I don't want to damage the kid. So my friends were inside the second chance place. Well, we started to hire a few of them, and the guys who got it at the beginning, it was really messy. To be 100%, it was so messy at the beginning because there wasn't enough clarity, there wasn't enough structure to how we were doing it to say, hey, we will offer you a position, but here is the buoys. Here's the left and the right boundary to what you are allowed to do, right? This is where you can be all you want to be. Outside of this, we're going to have an issue. So at the beginning, we didn't have those boundaries. It was really, man, we lost a lot of things. We had a lot of turnover. Guys were showing up and they were like, well, you can smell the alcohol. And I'm like, yeah, bro, but you're on probation. Like you're not supposed to be drinking. It's actually illegal. It's no different than stealing something from the store, what you're doing right now. And I don't want to know that you're doing it because I also am on probation, right? Like I don't want to be around somebody who's violating their probation because I could get revoked too. And I could end up in jail because you have alcohol in your breath. So what it started out as was basically a babysitting program for me and my friends. And then what it's turned into is the guys who really get this. And when somebody offers you an olive branch and says, hey, I know that your past is, I know that you've got trafficking charges, right? Like the drug trafficking, selling drugs. You've got a bunch of DUIs, whatever it is. And most of them are silly, right? Like most of them are, you're making choices that you don't think are hurting other people, right? When you give those random guys the olive branch and it finally takes root, those guys will defend the culture and the people just like they would if they were running the streets. Because loyalty on the streets is everything, right? That's why they say snitches get stitches, right? If you open your mouth, nobody will, even the guy that has the drugs won't sell the snitch drugs anymore because they know that they're risking their personal freedom over it. Well, that same principle, these guys come to a real business and a real world item, and they realize that if they continue to live the values that they actually know how to live, but repurpose them for life, they can get somewhere. And some of these guys have gone from, not knowing how to do anything to, and they were known trafficking item guys, like known drug dealers, to these guys are making $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year, putting their skills to use. Like they know how to run a group of people. They know how to communicate at a high level, because if anybody who's been in prison knows that you have to figure out how to walk through there and survive that. Well, a job site is way less complicated because you're generally not going to get stabbed, right? Just way easier. But the social nuances of a job site are very similar to the yard in prison. But we just have to teach them that the outcome of prison, like you don't have to put your hands up and go to blows, right? Like you can say, hey, Bill, I'm feeling like you have something that you need to tell me. Like we're talking about how to problem solve with these guys, and it's fascinating to watch them. And at the beginning, we didn't know how to get them to talk. And so one of the things that we've done, and this is one of the most interesting social experiments that we've done, is we've started to have an icebreaker at our production meetings Monday morning. And this icebreaker started out with like, hey, what's your favorite car? What's your favorite sport? Your favorite sports team? Yada, yada, yada. And now for the month of November, every question had to do around gratitude. Like, tell me something you appreciate about two guys standing to your right. Because men don't know how to give compliments to other men, and they certainly don't know how to take them, right? But when you start breaking down these walls and you start taking the brick of separation in between relationships and setting it aside by giving compliments and olive branches, you have a camaraderie that that group of people now wants to protect. So the second chance employer came from that. But what it turned into is that we've allowed these guys to be the protectors of a culture inside K&L Industries, that when there's a personnel issue that has to do with some sort of recidivism, I go to the 2 or 3 guys that have worked for me longest. And I'm like, hey, this is coming up with so-and-so. Can you go see if it's something I need to get involved with? And usually that problem eliminates itself, or the person eliminates themselves within a few days or a week. Like, hey, somebody's padding their time card. I need you to go talk to them about making sure that they're not doing that. Well, usually what happens is they'll come and say, hey, I've done this. This is what I would like to do to make it right. Or they say, yeah, they know about me. I'm never going to get the trust back. I quit. But the guys that do make it through that valley of a problem, they come through and it is unbelievable the protection that they have for the organization that they've had a part in building. And that's the piece that I don't think people think about, because when you offer them the opportunity, and to be frank, we've had some really heinous crimes that we've overlooked to let people in, and what people are like, they're like, hey, I don't really want to tell anybody. I said, I'm not going to tell anybody what you did. Your past is none of their business, and it's none of my business. I just need to know if you can get onto certain job sites. Right? Like out here, Boeing's a big one, school systems, and like I need to know where you can work and where you can't. And outside of that, I'm not going to judge you for what you did, because I would hope that you don't judge me for what I did. Right? But it doesn't excuse us from what we did. It's not an excuse. We still have consequences. And so that's where it came from. I don't know if that answers your question all the way.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it's you and I talked about this in the past. Like I said, it's amazing what you're doing too, and it shows your leadership. It shows how effective you are as a leader too, and it's like I saw in the video I watched of you too. You talked about how you can relate to them. You build trust with them too. I mean, because you've been through certain situations that you have, they trust you. They trust you as a leader. And another thing, and just to kind of wrap this up, is I wanted to touch on being an effective leader. You said you want to be someone people respect. You want to have high character. You want to be a high character individual that has the morale compass. When people walk into a room, they recognize. But unless you have discipline in your life and push yourself to grow in these areas, it's not going to happen. So talk about your personal growth a little bit, what you've been doing to kind of better yourself. I know it's always a journey. We kind of brushed on it, obviously, as fathers and so on too. Yeah. It's such a new experience to us. Just touch on that a little bit more.
Yeah. So I think I didn't answer one of your questions before. You said like, what's your Nate said it's something like, what's the attribute or the expertise that you bring? Yep. That's not necessarily business related. I would say that I can get more out of people than other people. So like if let's use the widget example. If somebody can make 80 widgets a day with this leader, I could get them to make 100 or 120, right? Over time. It's not instant, right? I got to get them to believe in themselves. And I've had most of the great conversations I've had inside our organization come usually through some trial or tribulation. Like, hey, let's talk about what I see. And I cast this vision for them. I'm like, hey, I can see you being a great dad. I can see you getting out of this problem and becoming a whole person and becoming not just somebody who has a job that can support themselves, but a beacon of hope for people who have been in your situation. And so, casting the vision for people who don't have it at the time, I would say has allowed me to ask more of other people than they would ask of themselves. And so that, and it comes from, and that the reason I was saying that is it leads me into the answer to the last question you asked. Discipline means doing things you don't want to do when you don't feel like it. Right. So getting up early, going to work out, 75 hard has been one of those things that I definitely, with a kid, there's no way I can do it right now. But when I did it, I didn't think it was possible. Mm-hmm. And so I spent out like an hour and a half every single day alone with me. And that gave me the belief that anything was possible. And at the time, I had never run more than 45 minutes. That was how much I needed to run, right? And really what I would do, if I'm being honest, I would walk for a few minutes, and then I would run for 40 minutes, and then I would walk for two or three more minutes, right? Well, now I can leave and I can go run for 100 miles. I can go and I can say the destination is the destination, and my feelings are not going to dictate where we they might dictate when we get there, but it's not going to change whether or not we get there. And that's the piece of discipline. And when you combine discipline, open discipline, with belief in your organization, then people, when you say, hey, I believe we can do this and I believe we can do it in this time frame, they don't question you. And that's why I think it's important as business owners and leaders in your family for people to see you do hard things. If you're out of shape and you're lazy and you struggle with making sure that you're not drinking beer every night or whatever it is, whatever your vice is, if people see that as who you become, I saw a video the other day on TikTok or Instagram where this mom was walking through Costco and the little girl in the cart pointed over at the Pabst Blue Ribbon and said, "Daddy, Daddy," right? Hilarious video. Super sad that 2-year-old child that's barely able to speak can relate Pabst Blue Ribbon with her father, right? If you can get that same relationship, if somebody says, hey, I don't doubt that we're ever going to get there because you know what I know about Nate? I know that when Nate makes up his mind, even if it is really painful, he's going to get to the goal. That attribute allows you to ask more of other people because they see you doing exactly what you're asking them to do. And that's that servant leadership. I believe that us having discipline physically and going to work out is an act of selflessness to those around us. But in the moment, it feels selfish. And the world would tell you that it's selfish to take that time to do that. But I would argue as fathers, as leaders, as people who are above other people in the hierarchy of your organizational chart, that you owe it to those people to make the time to do it. And that's the discipline that when it's enacted right, like you can really get some amazing things out of yourself and the people around you when they believe that the destination is not negotiable.
I love that because it's so true in so many ways, man. Because it's like if you basically represent your company, and the people see you doing the right things, walking the walk, talking the talk, doing what you should be doing, coming in early, going home late, working out, doing those things. It's gonna resonate with them. It's gonna go down the line. Eventually, it's going to. It may take some people a little bit longer. But what you said right there, spot on, though, is you're a reflection of the company as the owner, as the leader of the business, and in the household too. I mean, the example you just gave with the child.
I would use like I run ultras for fun. I don't know that I really enjoy them, but I do them because it gives me time to work on me. But not one time has anybody ever asked, what number did you finish in that? Right? Like I ran 100 miles. I finished in 27 hours, more than twice what the winner finished the time in. Right? But never once has it come up that Nate's like, dude, that's such a waste of time. You could finish it in half that. Right? The journey is the magic sauce. It's not the destination. Right? People know intuitively now that I've done it now I know that I can. And I'm like, what's next, right? Like I've always wondered what that next thing is. That's the addictive personality inside of me, but it doesn't come up. Like Nate, nobody asks you about how many times you failed. They ask you about how many times you survived, right? It's not about the failure. It's about what you do after it. Bill, like your guys' business has been in business for 50 years or something ridiculous like that. Nobody asks you about the times that you almost died. Like the business almost went bankrupt. They always ask you, what's it like to know that decades and decades are going to add up to a century at some point, and you had a hand in making this thing carry through. That's the piece that I think that that social media and the world of this instant gratification society gets wrong. It's not about winning today. It's about making sure that you don't lose long term.
Yeah.
And that's the piece that I believe is the difference in most of our businesses. Because I know personally, and I've had conversations with both of you, like there was times that all three of us could have pushed the chips in and said, that's it. Like, it's just too hard. I could go make probably more money working for somebody else and be home earlier at night. But we haven't. And because of that, eventually this is another thing. Do more than you get paid for so that you can get paid for more than you do, right? Do more than you get paid for now, and eventually you'll get paid for more than you do. And that principle only comes when people see that you have that discipline and that dedication to carry it through. Otherwise, they don't believe you when you say whatever it is you said.
And that would have been the perfect segue to get into the family business stuff. But due to time, we're going to have you on again because, yeah, man, there's so much I want to talk to you about. And I think that's what happened last time you and I did a podcast together. We didn't even get to the family business stuff because there's so many nuggets people can take out of this today for sure. Nate, you got anything?
No, that was good, man. That was as much for me as it was for anybody else just listening there. I'm like, let's go.
Let's go.
That's good stuff.
I think the thing that I would tell anybody is if you think it's possible, it is. And if you think it isn't possible, it isn't. And that's something I learned. That Henry Ford said that whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And I've become less, how did they say it? I used to be an interrogator with my questions, and I'm trying to make my interaction with people be more curious. But I want to know why they believe when they say we can't do things. I want to know why it got to that. And so, in your organization, if you hit brick walls a lot, then start to figure out how to frame it in a curious way that's healthy. To say, Bill, I'm wondering why you think that. Like, I'm really curious. Like, help me understand why you believe we can't do 17 houses this year or whatever it is.
I think what you just said too is a key word when you're talking to the help me understand phrase is pure gold.
It changed everything. When you start allowing people to have a voice, if you can give them voice, you can cast a vision, and then what the jet fuel on it is giving them belief. Right? People who don't believe in themselves are a dime a dozen in this world. Capable people are also a dime a dozen. It's getting the capable people who believe in themselves that it's really hard. And that's why we look for those superstars in business. If you can find someone who's capable, who doesn't believe in themselves, you can fix that. You just need the skills, right? Like whatever those skills are that they need. And most of them are around technology. And a lot of these 30s and under people don't believe in themselves because everybody around them said, no, it's not possible. You have to have a college degree to get there. Well, I don't know that that's true. I don't think it is. So, yeah, man, I always appreciate chopping it up with you guys. I'm super excited. Nate, are you coming to, well, you think you're going to come to the retreat?
No, I'll be there. I'll be there.
Better be there.
I'm hoping that my wife and Paisley will be there too, but I've made it clear that selfishly I will be there either way. I missed the last one, and I'm not going to miss this one.
Yeah.
No, man.
Well, I'm stoked to see it.
Location.
Yeah, right.
Better.
How many miles is it from your house?
About 20 minutes from me. So yeah, not too far at all. Looking forward to that. You know, I can go home during a break, let my dogs out, and enjoy my time. So, no, I love it. Man. Maybe we'll have fun. I'm looking forward to it. I'm bringing our team there too.
Oh, nice.
So looking forward to bringing them, and yeah, looking forward to seeing Ed Milet too. That'll be pretty cool. I haven't seen him in person since you and I were at that last Arte meetup. So
there's a lot of cool things happening. I mean,
yeah.
John Maxwell was last winter's speaker. Ed Milet, I don't know who's next. How do you follow those two?
How do you top that? Yeah.
What sucker do you have go there?
Jesus. You have to bring Jesus in.
Oh, that's good.
No, this is awesome, Keith. Appreciate it, man. We're going to have to do this again, too, because I do want to get into the family business topic one day with you, too, because I know
absolutely.
You got a ton of knowledge on that. You and I relate a lot on that as well. So, but where can people connect with you?
Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn. They're all at Keith Callaway Jr.
For sure. Awesome, man. Well, with that being said, Nate, you got anything?
That's it, man. Thanks for coming on. It was great.
It's always good to see you boys. I appreciate it.
Like, share, comment, subscribe. You guys know the routine. We appreciate each and every one of you guys, and we will see you guys on the next episode.